And if we're talking, like I was just mentioning, so if you have a web server or anything else that you want to expose to the outside, it's a service, you're running a business, you've got application you need to run, used by external users. What you need to do is either Azure Front Door, which is the sort of more global scale, or App Gateway, which is if you don't really need a higher level of redundancy. They all provide basically the same features, although if you're using the web application firewall feature, the sort of some of the ins and outs, the low-level details of how you configure will be slightly different between them. But for the most part, they're very, very similar. It just depends if you have a global reach or not, which is why you use Azure Front Door in that. And they all support, say, Azure Private Link. So again, you would have your front end with either one of these services, and at the back end, you could use Azure Private Link so that the connection to the actual maybe VM on the back that you want to use, for example, is completely private and is never exposed publicly. It would just go over the private backbone. We won't go through this too much. It's quite a lot of detail for such a sort of a short discussion we've got today. So Front Door and App Gateway as well. So this one here is more again, as I said, regional, and it's got intelligent service protection. So you've got web app firewall. It has DDoS protection built into this as well, right? But that's more sort of some of the layer 7 analysis for DDoS versus utilizing the full, network level one that you get with the DDoS protection standard, and particularly against what are called bots. Can use private link again to access the backend services securely. So what you see there, right? So within each region, region 1, region 2, region 3, etc., that connection between the front end and say SQL Server, you would use private link to connect those up, right? And there's SSL offload, as you would maybe expect, HTTP load balancing failover, and you can leverage key vault, which you should be doing for any of these services actually. So if you have secrets, encryption keys or any other type of secret, you would leverage what's called Azure Key Vault to protect those secrets. And obviously, Front Door is one of many services which can do so. And it also has uses some CDN, so a content delivery network. So depending on where a user is accessing, right, they'll be accessing the service. It is closer to them, and it'll be cached as well. And application gateway. So WAF, so Azure Web App Firewall is used by all the services. So App Gateway, Azure Front Door, and even CDN, which is sort of the static version of all this, they all can use a web application firewall, which if you're exposing web services to the internet, you do want to be using this because it's the only way to get that sort of inspection of the traffic, right? So you don't want to rely on the SQL Server at the end to have to do some sort of protection, or maybe hope that the SQL Server is the one that blocks you against a SQL injection attack, which is just one of many types of attack. So WAF, Web App Firewall, is powered by threat intelligence. So we see signals from across the globe, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. So if we see sort of common attacks happening elsewhere, we'll be aware of that, right? And if it then comes into your area, we'll be kind of aware that there's an attack in the wild, and we'll be able to protect you against those threats. And you can both do custom rule sets. You can do a lot of custom rules. So what you probably do with something like this is you would turn it on in a listening mode for a while, and it would kind of, you would see all the kind of common traffic patterns and what's going through your system, and then based on that, you would create some custom policies to really sort of tailor, how you are protecting the web app firewall. But it has a lot of out-of-the-box ones as well. So the full OWASP. It has all the different OWASP policies, and not just the top 10. It's quite an extensive set out of the box. But again, you will want to tweak those, and it's again full featured web app firewall built-in, sort of application over DDoS. It has connection for Sentinel, cloud, dependent for cloud as well, so you can kind of get visibility of all of this in our other threat protection platforms as well. And if you look at so all of our networking protection features, how they kind of work together, right? So at the front, if you're looking at a global sort of setup, you've got Front Door, which gives you that protection. It'd be the first step that's kind of looking at the traffic, especially if you got WAF turned on, right, to inspect that traffic. And then when it gets going down a bit further, so when it gets down towards, it's going to start entering into the VNets. So DDoS is at the VNet level. So that would, look for potential DDoS attacks then, okay? And then once you get from that, you've got, depending on what's happening, other services come into play. So depending on how you configure your network, you might have Azure Firewall be the next step. It depends kind of on your compliance requirements, or if you want that additional threat protection before you even get to, say, Bastion or App Gateway, right? Or you could have all these X3s sort of in line and address different types of traffic. It all depends on what architecture works for you. But all these function within the hub. So Azure Bastion gives you that secure remote access to services both in the hub and then within your other VNet. Azure Firewall can inspect traffic in every direction. And then both App Gateway or will kind of help you look at what's kind of north-south. So if you got services in one of the spokes that you want to expose to internet, which isn't global, then of course, as I already mentioned, you use your App Gateway plus WAF to protect that traffic. Then you get your public PaaS services. You got service endpoints, network security groups that you would use to protect traffic as it goes between VNets or even at the virtual machine level, depending on how granular you want to go. With app services environments, you could be running within these as well. And then, like I've already kind of mentioned, you've got private links. So any of these PaaS services you're running on the back end, so SQL Server, storage accounts, Cosmos DB, etc., you could use this private link to ensure that it's not ever going to be exposed publicly unless you explicitly intend it to be exposed using a service sort of like front door or application gateway, plus web application firewall.